Hello, Tangi.
Hi.
Tanga. I
Hi.
apologize.
It's okay.
Well, welcome to Talking Back to Suicide. Uh, our co-host, Kino Isaac, whom I know you know, right, from
Yeah.
his interviewing you, unfortunately, there's a family emergency and he cannot join us. So you and I both are sending him healing wishes, right? And that all
Yes,
should
yes,
be better, right?
for sure. Yeah.
So I want to introduce you, and you have quite a bio. So you were born and raised in China, and you had moved to Canada in the late 1980s as an international student, earning a Master's of Science degree at the University of Saskatchewan in 1992. And since 2012, you've written under your real name and your pen name, Tanga, publishing poetry, prose, and short stories both in English and Chinese across North America, England, and Taiwan. And you are the recipient of 5 literary awards and a finalist for 5 others. Congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
your debut novel, The House Filler, was published in Canada in 2023, and it was a finalist for the 2023 Island Book Awards and the 2024 Canadian Book Club Awards for fiction, and it won the 2024 Independent Press Award for New Fiction and National Association of Independent Writers and Editors Award for Literary Fiction. So again, congratulations. And I can see there is more to come, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. So as you know, the purpose of the Talking Back to Suicide podcast is really to give voice to I would really say to humanity, right? To the difficult life experiences that many people experience, mental health distress, mental health illness, all sorts of contributing factors that can affect our mental health well-being. And I wonder, in any way and any place in your story that you'd like to start our conversation about that.
Well, actually, I think the conversation starts with my real life experience because my boyfriend killed himself 20 years ago, 2005 in April. Like, yeah, it's like 20 years ago. So that was a horrific experience. And it took me years to recover in a way. And it was sudden. Nobody knew. Like I didn't know it would happen. Like because it was a new relationship, but it was like perfect. And I think people are in a new relationship. They're hide well. Like everyone would bring out the best of you. Like they'll hide the problems and troubles. So he hid it really well until it happened. Um, so I like to talk about that, my experience, and see if there's anything we can do to help people from those darkest moment in their lives.
Now, what country was this taking place in, and how old were you, and how old was he?
Um, that was in Canada, and we were both in our 40s. So it was like both of us were divorced once before, and I was single, no children. He had 2 sons. One was already grown up, and he just had a granddaughter. So he was in his late 40s. I was in my mid 40s. Actually, now think about, yeah, mid 40s, early 40s. I was in my early 40s. Yeah.
So this is the anniversary month.
Yes, it is.
And again, how many years ago was that?
20 years ago.
20 years.
Yeah.
Well, it must have been shocking from what
Yeah,
you're
it
describing.
was it was horrific. Um, do you want me to tell the story, like what happened? Uh,
Yes, if you feel comfortable doing so.
yeah.
If in terms of how he died, if you could say that more so in generalities, rather than giving, if there was a specific medicine he took or whatever, just say it was an overdose.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Um, we met actually online. So I think there's another problem of people like people dating, like do online dating. First of all, you don't really know his friends and families, so you don't have that knowledge about his past. And second, the people dating online, um, there's a there's a culture that nobody want to talk about their in quotation marks baggages. So which means you're supposed not to talk about your problem, your suffering, because that is considered as baggage. And if you do that, then people, shy away from you. So everybody will, pretend they're happy, their life is perfect. Um, the reason they don't really need you, the reason they're online just because they want to share their good life with you, which is very shallow. And also, but that's the environment, that's a culture. It's just I think that's probably why he hid his problems so well. He was suffering. Later, I learned that he was suffering not only depression but also bipolar. But he refused to take medication because he told me that his ex-wife, he divorced like 8 years before that, and his ex-wife also had a mental illness or condition, and when she was taking medication, he got angry. He said he believes the medication will hurt you rather than help you, and so that's how I knew he never took a medication. And so it's well, it was not love at first sight, but he was so gentleman. He had everything I wanted. He was generous. He was a humor, like had a great sense of humor, and he was handy. He helped me with my little, problems in my house, um, around my house, and it just seems perfect. And so at the time, I was on disability leave during that time, and that was the time I just started to look for job again. And also that was the time I was trying to sponsor my sister come to Canada to visit, to help her to get a visitor's visa. So that was on April 6th. Actually, not on April 6th, on April 5th. Um, I remember that was a Tuesday night. I was try to fax over the documents my sister need from Canada to China. But in China, like at the time, she had to go to a post office to get the fax. But for some reason, the fax never gone through. So I told him about that. He came to my place, brought his laptop, his printer, and said, you can scan all the information into my laptop. Then I can just we can just email to her. So that was like he came to my place just before supper, and we did all that. And I asked him if he want to have supper. He didn't have supper, so I cooked some Chinese dumpling. He had like three. He was a grown man. He had three dumplings, which I said, well, it's not enough, right? It's only three. He said, no, no, I'm full. And he was kind of quieter than before. And then he said, okay, why don't you just keep my printer here just in case if you need it later, like for now. I said, okay. Then he gave me a digital camera. He said, well, I don't really have use of, I don't have any use of this. Do you want to keep it? Like I can leave it here. I said, okay. Like it was, I never thought of anything. And when he left, he always say like, he always say, I love you when we parted. But I still didn't feel comfortable to say, I love you too. So I always say, me too. Then he would say, oh, you love yourself too. It's like a playing of words. And so that day when he was leaving, he was waving at me. He said, I love you. I said, me too. He said, oh, you love yourself too. So we did that. And then he told me next day he was going to like his job was a salesman for oil industry equipment. So April and May is like his peak business time, and because also his compensation is salary plus commission. So this is also the month that he would make most of his money. So he told me he was going to drive to different locations next day in Alberta. You know, Alberta is a oil and gas energy province, right? And he was going to drive around and talk with the those people on the on site to try to sell more equipment. And that was Tuesday night. Then Wednesday afternoon, I went to for an interview. And after interview, I called him. He was not answering. I left a message. I said, I interview went really good, but don't call me back because I need to have a nap because I worked until like 4 a.m. the day before to prepare for everything. Right? I remember so I was that tired. Then by Wednesday evening, I had a Toastmaster Club meeting to go. I came home at about 10 p.m., called him again, no answer. Then Thursday afternoon, I felt something seems not right. So I called him again. And by now, I couldn't leave any message in the mailbox because his mailbox was full. Then his son called me because I met his son, right? And so he, oh no, that's not right. So I called him at his on his home line, and his son picked up the phone and said his father was missing, and the police were there. Police broke down the door, and they were still talking with police. And his son, his elder son, had his key, but it seems he changed his key beforehand. So all of a sudden, the son couldn't get into the house. And then the son said, "Do you want to talk with my mom?" That was the first time I talked with his ex-wife. So I said, "Well, what's going on? I think probably we should start a search team or something." And she said, "Oh, I'm not worried too much." I said, "Like, why?" She said he did this before. He would, he may just drove to the mountains and cool himself down because he did this before. He like just left the house without telling anyone. That was Thursday. By Friday, I had a counseling session with a counselor. That was a continuous session, had nothing to do with the relationship or him or me. It was about career and the goal in life because I was at a crossroad of which way to take in my career. So, but the counselor was very inexperienced. She was a graduate school student, and they need a credit as a counselor to finish the degree. So she was not experienced. So when I talked with her about this situation, because I was totally panicked and asked for advice, I said, I probably should hire private detectives, right? You see the movies and the books, right from books. And basically she said, I think you take on too much responsibility on yourself. Do you know how expensive hiring private detective was? And she said, I think you should let his family look after, like take care of those. And also she said, you have to think about it. You just scanned in all your important documents, like my tax return, my bank statement, my investment statement. You just scanned all this into his laptop the day before. Next day he disappeared. I think you should talk to a police and report identity theft. And you need to talk to Equifax and TransUnion, report to the credit bureau. So I didn't believe her because I knew this guy, even though it was a new relationship, I just by intuition, I didn't believe her. I said, well, how about, when we first met, you said when it is needed, you would call in your supervisor to help. I said, I think now is the time for you to call in your supervisor. So she got her supervisor, and her supervisor said exactly the same thing. So instead I was spending time on the phone, talk to police, talk to credit bureau. I even drove to TransUnion office in Calgary. I reported identity theft, and but that was Friday afternoon. By Friday afternoon, I called his son again. I said, "Why you're not doing anything, right? You say when someone is missing, it will be online, it will be sometimes even on TV, and people will set up a call for volunteers to the search." I said, "How come? What do you think? I think we should do this." And he said, "No, no, no. Police is handling this. I think they want to keep a low profile." He said, "We want to keep a low profile on this. Police is handling this, and they know what they're doing." So I couldn't do anything. By Friday evening or late afternoon, when I got home, I started to call, get a yellow page way back when, right? We have yellow page, and I start to call those private detective companies. But that was already after hour, so I couldn't reach anyone. And I left a whole bunch of messages. By Sunday, one person called me back. I just couldn't believe, like I probably left 20 messages, and one person called me back. And so I told him what happened, and he said, "Do you have his credit card information?" I said, "No, I don't." He said, "If you have his credit card information, we probably can track that down. But if you don't, then there's nothing I can do." And then he said, "If police cannot find him, I can't either." I was thinking, well, then why do you guys are even in the business, right? So that was a Sunday. By Monday morning, I got a call from chief examiner's office. So when I answered the call, and the woman said where she was called from, I started to cry right away. I knew. So they found his truck. He was driving a company truck. They found his truck and himself in a private farmland north of Calgary, in a small town called Disbury. So he used three methods. He turned on the gas, he took some pills, and also he slashed his wrists. He made sure he would die for sure. But he left a tape recording for me and for his family. So they only transcribed the one part for me. And I never got to that tape. I never heard his voice. But on the transcription, he said that I'm afraid I will become your Romeo, because we were joking about Romeo and Juliet, because like after we know each other for not very long, he want to propose, and then he want to get married within a year. And I said, no, that's too fast, right? Then, we talk, he said, well, doesn't take long for Romeo and Juliet to fall in love. So then in his last, words, he said, I'm afraid I'll become your Romeo. And he also said something like he didn't want to burden me and his family. So that was what happened. And then it was really hard for me because I was grief alone, because his family, his sons and his ex-wife, they were a family. And I now also learned that in Western culture, if you're not family, they don't, like, say police had this program about help the family to grieve, right? They visited his ex-wife, but not me. I was just a girlfriend. And I was grief alone because my family didn't know him that well, and my friends, because it was a new relationship. So that your friends and family almost made you feel embarrassed if you grieve for this person. They would say, "Hey, move on." It's just like I said, emotion cannot be just like a light switch, right? You turn on, you turn off. It doesn't happen that way. But like everybody says, especially my family, like my sister said, stop going to the graveyard, stop going there. You need to, get yourself out of this. Go out, have fun. I'm thinking, like, there's just no understanding there. I know they're for my sake to do that, but I also realize that when you talk with friends, sometimes it can hurt because they don't know what to say. They either avoid the topic or they try to provide a solution right away. There was no solution. All you need is somebody to listen, but they try to fix it, especially guys.
To be with you, right? To
Yeah,
stand by
yeah,
you, experiencing that pain.
yeah. It was extremely hard, but there's lots of self-blame for me because that's called the survivor's guilt, right? So if you don't mind, I have actually I have a journey about him and written during that time. And I wrote, this is an email I sent to another friend. And if you don't mind, I just read a little bit because this is written at the time. It reflects the raw emotion without any processing, any selective memory, anything like that. So I said, I'm still struggling to understand. He promised so much. He was the one who talked about the future all the time. He was even talking about get engaged within 6 months and get married within a year. He had a good job, a house, the best relationship he ever had. In bracket, this was his own words. 2 adult sons and a brand new grandson. He also had a very good sense of humor. Therefore, when we were together, we joke a lot. We have seldom talked about anything serious. Now I wonder, had we discussed something serious, such as life and death, would that make a difference? I also blaming myself for not being able to pick up any clue, any sign. I asked him to be my rock, and he promised me. I have never even thought that he or men in general also need a rock. He had never shared his problem with me. He pretended that everything was fine until it was too late. So I think, if people reach out for their problems, share their problems with their loved ones, families, um, professionals, it could save lives. And a little bit follow up on my counseling because I already scheduled a series of counseling, right? So first time it didn't help. After what happened, I went to the session again, and I start to cry right away. Like during that time, if anyone asked me how are you, I start to cry. So then I told my counselor what had happened. I was expecting some understanding, compassion. I didn't blame anyone, right? It's just but I was extremely disappointed. I For the whole time I was talking, like she didn't ask any questions, didn't offer any condolence. She was like, that was her like puzzled, like just like that. So after a while, I just said, okay, I need to go to washroom. I went to washroom. I washed my tears away, and I thought I'm not going to share this with her, or I have to be really careful to share about my grief because that reaction was like kill you the second time.
No understanding, compassion,
Yeah,
comforting.
yeah, and also I want to say something. During that time, the only person who gave me a hug were my friends, all these professionals, even though they're women. Like I pretty much talked with all the female professionals. Nobody offered a hug. And I was have acupuncture treatments. So I went to my next appointment, and just one question, how are you doing? I start to cry, and I start to tell people what happened. And this a female acupuncturist, she stood up. I said, "Oh my goodness, she's going to give me a hug." I was ready to get this hug, and then I realized that she just went to the another table and pick up the clinic's box and say, "Hey, here you are." So I share this with my friends, but they said, "Oh, you have to understand, they're professionals. They're not supposed to hug you." I think that's just the no common sense at all. That's all, a hug is more than words and language, maybe, right? But I think the industry got it wrong in a way. And I even joined a grief group hosted by local hospital. We had two facilitators. They both suffered loss like this, right? Lost their loved ones, and we had about like dozen participants, and everyone's story was like heartbroken, but most of them like they lost their spouse or loved ones due to illness, right? But there's like one case was there's the accident. One case was accident, one case was a murder. But like we had how many 10 sessions or something, and throughout these 10 weeks, there's not one single hug. It's just not a part of program. We don't hug each other. The facilitators, we share stories, but we don't. I just thinking, I think the Western culture now become overly sensitive about, hugging and touching and we're adults, and most of those times we're all females. Like, why we're all in grief? Why can't we hug each other? So that's my biggest complaint, basically throughout that period.
I'm thinking back in my role, profession, and calling as a psychiatrist, child psychiatry, and I'd also treated adults at times. And of course, one needs to be respectful of boundaries,
Yeah.
right? However, I certainly remember times of such heartfelt emotion and grief that there were times that I would say, may I give you a hug? Right?
Exactly. If it's consent,
So,
right?
and always for the purpose of helping that person, not that I had to give a hug, but feeling that the other person was in need of a hug. And if one, again, each situation is different, but I think that the words, may I give you a hug, that
Yes.
gives the autonomy to the person to say, no, thank you, or yes, please give me a hug.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think I can feel what you're saying, that the hug is more than a hug, right?
Yeah.
It's a being with and an embrace and a recognition of the depth of the pain. And going back to what you said, that there are many life situations where it can't be fixed. What happened, happened, and there's no going back, right? And so in those catastrophic events, to recognize the person they're bleeding out in front of you, right?
Exactly.
Their heart is bleeding, right? And we must recognize that, right?
Exactly. And also I've been telling my friends, I realize that that's in our society, if you see a person fell and hurt himself, like break a leg or arm or sprained ankle, we automatically we go to help. Most of people, it's just the instinct, right? But emotionally, they don't know what to do, so they avoid you. That's because really, like, words can save a life. I heard about those stories over and over, but the most people didn't know how to offer. I know lots of people, they don't know how to ask. Like for hug, for example, it's really awkward if you ask for a hug. Say, hey, please hug me. I need your hug. It's really, really hard to say that. So it's up to the other person sense that and offer that, as you said. And also I believe like lots of people, they're very nice, very kind, they're compassionate. They donate food and money or volunteer, but it comes with the emotional or mental problem. That's the part about the culture or dating culture I was talking about. And in this email to the friend, actually I talked about it as well, like in more detail. If you don't mind, I'll just read a little bit more, because I think it's important. Okay.
Could you? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I know that when people first met, they don't talk serious stuff. Everybody wants to portray themselves as strong, independent, happy, successful, problem-free, etc., etc. How many times you have seen people claim that they have a problem in their profile? The profile I was talking about, like a dating an online profile. None. Even after two people start to see each other, they still pretend everything was fine. Sharing one's problem with the other person could mean lose that person. I guess it also true that in our society, nobody wants to be around with somebody who seems to be weak, has problems, or has baggage, so to speak. I often see that people claim in their profile that their life is just great. Actually, their single life is just absolutely wonderful. They don't really need anybody. They just want somebody to share their good life. When I see this, I always wonder, why are you here then? I'd rather to be both wanted and needed. Being wanted alone is not good enough for me. It's not enough for me. How many times have you seen people claim that they don't want to deal with anybody who has baggage? I believe that in my age group, or even for people in their 30s or late 20s, there has to be some kind of baggage in quotation marks. One time I saw a gentleman ask asks a question in his profile. He said, what to mean by not having any baggage? Have you been living in a vacuum? The matter is not having any baggage, but how to deal with the baggage. So, um, yeah, that's why I think he wants to deal with his own problem rather than share with me. I believe he believe if he shared with me, he would lose me, right? And I'm here calling people. Doesn't matter if you're a friend or a boyfriend, girlfriend, or family member, loved one. Don't shy away from people with baggage. Your help could change a person's life.
And we all have quote baggage. And if you're alive, you've had experiences in your life, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And even our personal experiences and historical generational experiences, right?
e-
That
Exactly.
as well impact us. I wanted to ask you, Tonga, do you feel that difficulty in sharing, being vulnerable, right? Do you feel that there's a difference between women being that way or men being that way? So a gender difference and also cultural influences on that.
I think there's a great difference between women and the men. So men, they're problem fixers. They try to fix the problem. The moment you open your mouth, they try to fix you or fix the problem. So I had a good friend, like a male friend. I shared this with, and eventually, I think I for that period of time, I stopped talking with him because every time when I start to talk about this, he will try to fix the problem. And but well, he's also a Chinese, so I think Chinese in China is even more difficult to share emotional problems like this. I think in Western country, we know we're more aware of, compared with country like China or culture like Chinese culture, we're more aware of mental health or um, mental illness, whichever way you call it. But in China, it's even worse. Even my female friends in China, I felt I didn't get much help from her. So there's both cultural differences and the male and the female differences. I think female were more lean to listening, to be there with for your friends. You even read this from books like Man from Mars and the Women from Venus, right? Usually men have problems, they go out, they have beer with their friends, they talk about sports, weather, something else other than the problem, then they get home, they feel better. But I think women couldn't do that. We need to talk about our problems. And I think when a person start to talk about his or her problems with you, that's especially something as catastrophic as this one, they place great trust in you. They trusted you understand. You can offer emotional support. That's a great trust. When that was not um, realized, then that trust is broken. That person will climb up. I wouldn't talk with those people again about anything serious or horrible. Um, like because I learned my lessons. I had to be really careful about who to share those deep emotions with.
Were you able in your life to find people that you could share those feelings with?
I think now I probably do, but way back when I didn't. I helped myself with reading tons of books, and especially books about life after death, about the other world, because that gave me comfort and a little bit of comfort by knowing that death is not the end of everything. The person still, like, spirit is still there. And I also get confirmation of that I because of this I start to say mediums, and I got confirmation. They were still there. There's another thing they're not they were they're still there, but there's another thing I want to talk about that. Last time I saw a medium was about a year ago, and Herb was there. Also, my grandma. My grandma was always there. My grandma, my maternal grandmother, is the person my book is based on. So, Golden Phoenix, the protagonist in the book, the house filler, is based on my grandmother's story, and she was always there when I talked to a medium. But anyway, but I didn't. This was the first time I learned that death cannot solve every problem, because he actually, through the medium, told me that he felt stuck in another world. He couldn't move forward. And he said he was looking for me for a long time, because I couldn't connect with him other than through a medium, and I haven't seen a medium for a long time. So he couldn't connect with me for a long time, and he needed my help. So after that, I lit candles for him. Like, things we do in this world would help those spirits in the other world. It's like that was a eye-opening you know time. It's just I was really astonished. They need our help. They needed our help. So stress does not solve every problem. And I want people to know that, right? Um, I also like to talk about Sidney Sheldon, because when I first started to read, English novels, other than classics. Well, actually, I read all the classics, classics in Chinese. But when I first started to read novels in English, I started with people like Sidney Sheldon and Archer. What is his name? A British guy, the UK guy. Anyway, so I like Sidney Sheldon a lot. Then after I read all his novels, I read his like biography and biography. I think he wrote it that himself, autobiography. And when he had a mental illness. I forgot the exactly which one, but he had that. And when he was 19, 18 or 19, I think he was when he was 19, he tried to kill himself one day. So he had a drug, like a medication, drugs. He had alcohol in his room. He was going to do that. Then his father knocked on the door. So so then father walked in and saw all that and knew what he was going to do. And very gently he said, well, life is a book. Don't you want to see the next page, next chapter? Don't you want to read until what is the end? So he offered to have a walk with his son. And after that talk, Sidney Sheldon decided not to kill himself. And he lived to a long life. I think he lived until his 70s or 80s. I don't remember, right? But he lived a really long, successful, fulfilled life. And I think his father had a great wisdom, great wisdom. I think usually parents will panic. I know their parents, would send their children, daughters or sons into a mental hospital, lock them up. And recently, a few months ago, there's a really sad story happened to a friend of my family that I've been friends with them for over 20 years, like 25 years. Um, their grandson had some mental problem because the mother died really like in her early 50s due to accident. That had a great impact on children. I think the son blamed himself for that because he didn't report his mother's missing early enough. He kind of delayed. I think this is too much self-blaming. He dropped off the college. He started just wandering around and lost touch with his family for years. When he finally came back to Calgary, he tried to go to university again, and he was like almost in his 30s, and then he couldn't how do you put it, like adapt, right? Because all the other college students are much younger than him, and so he dropped off again. And last time was his father sent him to the psychiatric ward in the hospital because he believed I don't against that. I think that's totally a right thing to do. But I think a family support is also extremely important because what happened is after he was sent to the hospital, his father left, drove away, and then he just wandered out. No, for some reason, nobody watched that word. Nobody stopped him. He went all the way to a overpass above a highway, like in a city highway. And so a police, I don't know, one police or two policemen, I don't know, like a police saw him, stood on the bridge. So the police approached him. I think also probably the hospital gown or something he wear looks like odd, right? So they approached him.
Did he, Tonga, did he wander off of the hospital grounds?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah,
yeah, so he had been admitted to the hospital, but
yeah,
somehow he left and no one saw that he left.
exactly, yeah.
Wow. Mhm.
So when the police approached him, he panicked, he jumped, and he hit by a truck and was instantly dead. He was like 30 or 31.
Terrible, tragic.
Both of his parents are doctors. Oh, one was doctor.
Could have and should have been prevented.
Yeah, it could happen to anyone, right? But it's like why things like tragic like this happen. It's not a suicide, so to speak, but we don't know why he jumped. He could be panicked, but he could be just didn't want to live anymore. He could feel like cornered, right? And there's so many people have like a mental um health problems. His uncle, which is like a long-term friend of mine, because the whole family are my friends, right? And he had schizophrenia, and so during one we were just friends, we're not boyfriend and girlfriend. But one day I was at work, all of a sudden he called me. He said, "Sherry, do you want to go with me on a cruise?" I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I need to go to on a cruise," and he said, "I can't stay here anymore. I cannot stay in this city anymore. Would you go? If you go, I'll cover for both expenses." I said, "Wait, wait, wait. I think," I said, "I can't just stand up and go." I said, "I need, to talk with my supervisor about vacation. It's usually well planned ahead of time." I said, let me think. Let me talk with my supervisor." So after I hung up the phone, I thought something's not quite right. So I didn't talk with my supervisor. I just later I called him back. I said, "Dave, I'm afraid I cannot go with you." And he said, "Oh, Sherry, right now I already bought the ticket." He was in a traveling agency's office. He just bought a ticket for himself. We're talking about like thousands of dollars. I said, I didn't know what to say. I said, "Are you sure you want to do it?" He said, "I already bought the ticket. I'm going. I'm going." Then next thing I know was that he was committed to the hospital because he was not right. And later his mother told me the doctor said it's really dangerous for him to go on a cruise. Like he could just jump from the ship, especially when if he see all these other happy couples or happy people, right? It was really dangerous. I was so glad I didn't just say yes, let's go, right? Because yeah, then he was that's another thing. When he was in a hospital, his mother visited him, I visited him. His father never did, his brother never did. And he felt that they felt ashamed of him.
What do you think that shame is about?
Oh, it's shame is about I think our culture, we adore those people who are successful, who are strong, right? We it's like who is independent, who all these qualities. But if a person has a mental illness, this person is incapable, weak, maybe not very successful in terms of career or finance. And of course, you feel ashamed of. I totally understand that. And my ex fiance before her um, had a like serious mental illness. That's actually broke our relationship. And when he had this strike, like he said, it's like his condition happens every 2 weeks. When about every 2 weeks, when that happened, he didn't want to see anyone. He just wanted to hide in a corner, like nobody. Because I was there, I'm the eyewitness of his problem, his condition. He felt that was unbearable. He didn't want anybody, right? Usually, we didn't want anybody to say we're like in a really really bad situation or condition, right? Either if it's a physical illness or mental illness or financial hardships, like anything like similar, we don't want other people to know. And when you don't want other people to know, you won't get any help. And he eventually he lost his job. He broke up our engagement and just went and hid in a corner and tried to recover. I'm sure. Well, I think lucky for him, he reached out for professional help. He has been talking with counselors like on a regular basis for a long time. I think that's probably saved him because at that time I was really afraid he would kill himself. And in the one way where I think it's really strange that we're compassionate for something solid or physical. Like I say, if one guy hurt physically, we try to help. But I think we just don't know as a society how to be more compassionate about mental illness or people with mental problem. But there's actually widespread. Lots of people have that.
As you were speaking, I was just thinking how, for some people, maybe many people, we like looking at sweet little animals like
Yeah, exactly.
kittens and dogs
Yeah,
and bunny rabbits. And if
yeah,
you saw a bunny rabbit, I don't know, that its little paw or foot was hurt, right? Or
yeah,
its ear wasn't standing up straight, we'd go, oh, poor little thing, let me cuddle you,
yeah.
and in a way our heart goes out. But if you potentially transpose that to in a way, it would be maybe an older human being. I think younger age children, if they're hurt, what one, impulse would be to comfort. But sometimes, do you think it's fear? Are we afraid of seeing someone else in pain?
I'm just thinking we don't first of all, like a mental, emotional hurts or harm or mental problems, we cannot see it. So it's not like I also saw lots of
Yes, invisible, right? It's
invisible,
going
yeah,
on it's going on the inside,
yeah,
manifesting on the outside, but only if you understand what you're seeing, and that
yeah,
often depends on the person telling you what's going on.
yeah. I also see lots of like animal rescue videos, right? We're so compassionate about animal get hurt, but for human, if physical hurt, yeah, you get compassion, but emotional is really hard. I think one thing is we don't know. Another thing is I think is the culture, as I said. We want to be with people who are successful, who has fun, and we can have fun with, who's humorous, who's make bright your day, and make you happy. But we have never thought of, can I make the other person, if not happy, but less unhappy? Or like we don't think that way. And you kind of, yeah, you don't want to be around people who are looks like depressed or you know um, no fun, quiet, or sometimes I think people who have the mental illness, it's all can come out as anger. Of course, nobody want to be around with somebody who's angry. Um, but if you have a close relationship with that person, I think that's important for you to help. I mean, you're not obligated, but why the word obligation also makes me feel like a legal contract, right? That's a bare minimum a person can do for another person, a bare minimum. We need to do a little bit more than bare minimum. So yeah, right. You're not obligated to help anyone, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't, right?
And I don't know, I would like your opinion on this. It feels that the world is getting crueler and crueler.
Exactly. Um, like when that happened, why I called there's a stress line for people to call, either not only for like a suicide, but for anybody's in
Do
distress.
you mean the 988 number?
In Calgary, it's a different
Oh,
number.
it's a, yes, different number, but it's like a hotline for
Yeah,
crisis and
yeah,
suicide. Yeah.
yeah. I did that, and
Mhm.
I didn't feel that it helped. Well, it depends on which person you get. Someone can make you feel really, uh, that person really cared. Another make me feel that's like, because when you see this person typing like crazy on the keyboard in the background, he was, even though she might be listening, but it makes you feel really, did she really care, right? If you can hear somebody cry their heart out and typing like crazy, right? And but I then went to the city of Calgary has also a program like I think 4 6 sessions, free sessions for you to talk with a counselor. That helped because most of those counselors, at least the one I talked with, she also had the similar loss. So when the person had that, then they're more understanding and compassionate. And then the grief group I went to, the both facilitators had the same or similar experience. So that is better. But if you just reach out for a friend or somebody who never experienced that, it's you need to be careful.
You mentioned a number of times survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to share with you that in 2014, my teenage patient had hanged herself.
Oh.
And it was the day after I had seen her for a session. I saw her and her mother. They were both in the session. Then I saw the teenage girl alone, and then the mother rejoined the session, and then the girl had left the session because she was walking to school.
Oh.
And in that session, at the end of it, the mother and I had both said how well she was doing and even smiled as we said that. During the session, she did talk about being teased. There was some bullying going on involving peers, and there was problems with her ex-boyfriend. So clearly there were stressors. She had also, when I asked her, denied thoughts about killing herself. After this horrible, horrible death, I went through, what did I miss? What didn't I see?
So it's the daughter hung herself.
Yeah, the
Oh.
daughter, my patient, died by suicide by hanging herself the day after the mother and I said how well she was doing. I went into therapy related to that. Um, and and it was about a year and a half later, I was finishing watching these videos on arts and healing. There was a course that I had been taking. However, I hadn't watched all the videos, and I had just learned that the videos were being taken offline. So I decided I needed to watch all these things. And it just so happened that it was Memorial Day, which is a holiday here. So I had the day and I was watching the videos. And one of them was on writing a poetic progress note. It was geared towards clinicians to think about something that happened and write a poetic progress note. And here it is, Tung Fu, a year and a half later, and she was on my mind. And I wrote a poem about the last time I saw her, including all the things that had happened, that what color her sneakers were, reciting to her Rudyard Kipling's poem, If, talking about the phrase, that which does not kill me makes me stronger. And her knowing that phrase, and there was a Kelly Clarkson song which used that line, and my patient started singing that song in the session with me.
Oh,
And the very next day, she ended her life, right? And then a year and a half later, writing this poetic progress note, which I called What Makes Us Live or What Makes Us Die. And then I later retitled it 13 Reasons Why Not, because there had been a Netflix series called 13 Reasons Why, which was, the story was about a young girl who was being bullied and ends up dying by suicide. And she leaves a series of audio tapes describing all the terrible things and all the people that had hurt her. And that was the series. And there was a lot of controversy about the series because it seemed to be glamorizing taking suicide.
really?
And there had even been an increase in suicide related to this series. So I ended up renaming what eventually became a video, a dramatized video enacted of my poem, right? And I called it 13 Reasons Why Not. And at the end of it, it talks about, there was a statement, you don't have to kill yourself to stop the pain.
Yeah.
But could you speak a little bit more about, quote, survivor's guilt and what you would recommend, for those who are experiencing that?
Well, I think it's really natural to feel survivor's guilt. I think it's really hard for people not to do that, but I hope they don't do that for too long. Like for immediate after, I think naturally people feel that. And in my journal I recorded down like my survivor's guilt. Um, about what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's true in a way, but those who wrote, like, I don't know where that phrase came from, but the person who wrote it and the people believe in it, we're all survivors. The person, those who didn't survive,
That's right. Yeah, in the midst, right? You have to
yeah,
stay alive to be able to, hopefully, for that wound to heal and to
yeah,
scar. Yeah.
yeah. I think for survivors, reach out for professional help and read your poem and watch the TV. The thing you said to dramatize the. Sorry, that's your poem is when produced something produced based on your poem.
Yes. Yeah. So I I went on
Mm.
Upwork, which is a freelance site,
Okay,
right? And was
okay,
working with actually, he was a song producer. I had worked with him previously. And then he hired actors. There was an actress who played the girl,
okay,
and she was renamed, not the real patient's name, but in the poem, her name was Elizabeth, and then she's with a clinician,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it's interesting because it was his creative idea to do this. At the end of the poem, which is acted out, right, in the session, you see the two of them, right, and
yeah,
the clinician is
yeah,
speaking this aloud.
yeah,
Um, at the end of it, it goes backwards.
yeah,
All the images are going backwards until the very beginning, where
yeah.
she's knocking on the door and saying hello, right at the start
Yeah.
of the session. And
I
then yes, yeah.
I
So
think
so for me, I was able to, I think part of my being able to do something with that pain, the tragedy of her death,
yeah,
and what part I had played as witness of not being able to see what was happening, and also um, sometimes you're not going to see it because at that moment it's not there,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because suicide can be impulsive,
yeah,
right? And so impulsive, it's in research studies, it's been shown within 30 minutes of having a suicidal thought, or even down to 10 minutes of having a suicidal thought, a person can turn to suicidal action, right?
yeah,
But I feel that some of my recovery from this experience was to turn that pain into purpose and to advocate for suicide prevention in whatever way I can, and to also share my story. And my story also includes that I had attempted suicide when I was in medical school, and was had taken a overdose of medication that was prescribed medication that I knew in overdose could be lethal,
yeah,
and ended up medically admitted. And then years later was diagnosed with bipolar 2 disorder, which is episodes of depression and hypomania. And to be able to speak out loud, that emotional distress, because, you don't have to have a psychiatric illness to become suicidal and to die by suicide, right?
yeah,
But to be able to get that out into the conversation, right? We're human beings, right? We
yeah,
have pain,
yeah,
and there we need to. Um, I wish it didn't have to be that we have to be courageous to speak our truth,
yeah,
right? That we can
yeah,
just say, I'm hurting, right? And I need someone and something to help me. I need to hold on to a person, hold on to hope, and to receive professional and appropriate treatment so
yeah,
that more lives are not lost, to suicide.
yeah. I think people need to watch your video. If you can send me that link afterwards,
Yes, I will. I
I'll
will.
pass it around. And also, I want to just say something before I forget. In China, in recent years, there's something phenomenal is really horrible, horrific. Young people, they make a suicide date. So it could be two, three, four, five. They get to know each other online. Then they make a date. They say, okay, we all will be all at this place this day. Then we kill ourselves together. That happened more than once, and they either jump off a cliff or a bridge or whatever. They kill themselves together as a group before they don't even know each other. They didn't even know each other, but they get online. They have this connection, so to speak, and then they do it together. So this well planned suicide. And as of my boyfriend, actually, after his passing, I talked with a nurse. My ex, my not my ex, my late boyfriend. he was a Catholic, and he was also kind of taking up leadership roles in a church, and he was a mentor. He mentored a young nurse, a male nurse, who want to be a Catholic. They have like a 2 years program, mentoring program. So when I met this guy, this nurse, he told me that about during that time when he was mentoring her, that's 2 years before. Once they talked about suicide, and so Herb asked him about what kind of suicide, what kind of method will make sure the person will die. And the nurse told him everything, all his knowledge about that. And at the time, he didn't think about it at all. But after Herb's passing, I think he had a survivor skill, because he didn't think, he didn't make the dots, connect the dots. So he believed his knowledge helped Herb to kill himself, made sure there's no rescue. He was absolutely like certain about his decision. That was, well, if that is the case, then this one is well planned, or at least he had the thought about it. And I think we only know those people who either killed themselves or attempted, but how many people have thought about it? I think it's way, way, way more. I have thought about that many times in my life. The only, I said, two reasons I didn't do it. One is I like my duty to my parents or outweighed my own happiness or my own decision, right? Another thing is I'm too coward. I'm too chicken. I'm saying I'm too chicken. I'm afraid of pain. I couldn't suffer the pain. So what if I end up not dead and become crippled, or that is
Yeah.
always scares me. How many people would actually voice that? I think I have never heard any of my friends told me, "Oh, I thought about that." I never told any of my friends about that. But I wrote in the third book, because only my first book is published. I still have two books already finished. So that was in my third book, right? It's
Going back to what you said about groups of young people online, right?
yeah,
Arranging for them all to kill themselves as a group.
yeah,
That was young people in China.
in China.
Yeah.
In recent years, we're talking about just last 4 or 5 years. It happened over and over and over.
If you know what has been the response to that in terms of intervention?
There's no intervention. I don't think people believe they could intervene. They just say, "Oh, horrible! Oh, so sad." That's it. I don't know if there's any intervention program. In China, like here, we have drop-in center. We have programs for alcoholics, drug addict. We have women's shelter. We have for abused women. China, they don't have those. They don't. So I remember reading the book. The very famous one, Hunger Game, right? Hunger Games is like well written, and it's become a classic example of how a novel should be written. And it's a read book, but well-written book. But there's one thing in the book I start to laugh. Well, obviously, the author never been in a country like either China or Korea or whatever, right? Or like a really poor country, because she mentioned something about this. The younger sister might be sent to a home. So that was like a horrible thing. So the elder sister, what is her name? Agnes, or I forgot her name. And she will try everything to preventing that from happening. And I was thinking, okay, if you talk about like a country or a nation or a society like it is described in the book, there's no homes. There's no homes. There's no such program. There's no homes. Nobody will be sent, take from this household and send it to another home. No, you stuck with wherever you are. Yeah, and I think, of course, I think love is the thing to save people's lives, but I think only love is not enough. Like those people I know who killed themselves, especially from this family stalker. There's love. The parents and grandparents, they all love this person. Lots of people actually they kill themselves, from a very loving family. You wonder how did that happen? So I think understanding comes before love. Lots of time, people love other people without understanding. Of course, if the other person doesn't share, how do you understand, right? So it's two how do you say that, two-lane road, or it's like the person need to share his or her problem in order for those people who love him or her to understand and to provide support. So it's a two-way street. That's what I'm trying to say. It's two-way street.
It's kind
um,
of like asking that person in distress, which of course can become very difficult, especially if you're in extreme distress, to
yeah,
reach out. So
yeah,
there's the reaching out part, and there's also the reaching in part from
ex-
the people surrounding that person.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. What role do you think social media is playing in this? And I'm
I think
thinking especially of young people, but it could happen to someone older. But let's just talk about somebody younger, where there's teasing and online bullying. I'm thinking of, I think maybe some K-pop stars in South Korea, where singers, right, dying by suicide, right? Related to online bullying.
it's horrible. It's horrible. I think that social media and online didn't do much to help, but to hurt. Because when people hide behind a fake name, like nobody knew who this person is, that person, I think there's no accountability. There's no you know, there's no any worry or concern about his like a reputation, right? People just lash out. It's horrible. You see less compassion, more like harm and hurting, teasing, bullying. It's horrific, and I don't know how to solve that problem.
Maybe, I don't know, we all need to spend less time online.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes like when this happens, you always wonder why is that person still reading those, tweets or messages? Why is that person just didn't shut down the online? If I were the person, I just shut it down. I wouldn't read another single message to protect myself. So it's almost become a dictation. I read some books said it's a dictation. Once you get that dictation, you cannot, not dictation, addicted,
Addiction, yeah.
addiction. Yeah, then you can't pull yourself away from online stuff, from social media. And what is really horrific is that, let's say, if in person, only those person who could hurt you. That is limited, right? Your immediate family, your friends, your colleagues. But online, it could amount to like thousands, tens of thousands if you're famous, right? It's not a good thing. I
And
think
I think our brain is wired to pay more attention to the negative than the positive,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
That might be also part of the reason why, there could be, I don't know, 100 positive comments, but the one cruel one is going to be the one that you're going to remember.
Yeah,
Plus, in the age of social media, it's not just one cruel comment. There can be thousands of anonymous people,
for
right,
sure. Yeah.
attacking you. And then it becomes, don't read it,
Yeah.
right? Turn it off,
Exactly.
and go to someone hopefully that cares about you,
Yeah.
loves
And
you.
yeah, sorry.
No, you
And
speak. Yeah.
it could be lead to something even worse because there's a Chinese writer. Her name is Fang Fang. She lived in Wuhan, where the COVID-19 started. So she wrote a diary called the Wuhan Diary. Actually, you can find it on Amazon. So she was the only writer in China documented the pandemic, and then she was um, how like she not only she suffered bullying from online, but we're talking about tens of lots. She got lots of supporters, but also lots of people basically said that she tarnished the reputation, like China's image, and she was handing knife to the United States to harm China. Like she was the traitor. And there's one martial artist. This guy was a founder of his club or association. He has like thousands of members, all martial artists. He called those people to beat up Fang Fang. You think about thousands of martial artists. This guy wanted his members to beat up this writer. We mean, if it happened, she would die, no doubt. Like for a period of time, she was too afraid to even step out of her house. And those people came to her door and plaster a big like a sign or slogan and said something, like you're traitor, you're this and that. Like it was horrible because, as I said, without social media, those people who can hurt her is limited. But with it, it could be a mob, a huge mob to crush her.
Right? Yeah, it's really anti-social media.
Yeah, it's no longer a social thing. It's like a battleground, battlefield. And especially you don't even know who's your enemy. Most of the time you don't even know who they are. Right?
If there is someone in the audience right now, right, who's in emotional distress, even perhaps having thoughts that they want to end their life, what would you want to say to them?
Life is a book. Don't you want to read the next page, next chapter, and chapter after? I just have to borrow that because I couldn't think a better advice than that. And also there's it sounds like cliche, but this too shall pass. Right? My third advice, this is from myself, is death cannot solve all your problems.
And I would say, hold on, don't give up,
Don't give up.
right?
Yeah. And for myself, is I don't want to hurt my family. I don't want to hurt those who love me. So just think of how much hurt you're going to bring to other people. Yeah.
Where there's life, right, there still can be hope, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And if we there's no coming back from suicide.
No, no. And also, I'm a Christian, right? So if for these people have shared the same faith, I see life as a gift from God. So when you kill yourself, you're through that gift back at God.
I like to think too that we were created for a purpose, right? And that purpose is not to kill ourselves, right? So stay alive,
Yeah.
right? Read the next sentence. Not only read the next sentence of that book, but to create the next sentence.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Diane, for having me here. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.